What we're looking at is Gallery 10 in the British Museum. This is the gallery that contains the reliefs from Nineveh. And thanks to some modern work in digitizing this, we're able to navigate through and give you a pretty decent view of this. It's a long stretch of reliefs. That's from the palace, the Southwest Palace in Nineveh. And this particular portion is memorializing the victory over Lachish by Sennacherib in 701 BC. So here you have a combination of civilians and also warriors here on the beginning, the left portion of the panel, and then some cavalry down below. Notice the shape of the helmets, this conical shape. They have recovered some Assyrian helmets actually with that shape. It's also interesting to see the military armaments, whether the shields, size of the shields, or the spears, and we'll see other weapons. The headdress that we see on the individuals on the left would suggest that they are not part of the Assyrian troops, but rather would be Israelites. That's my hunch. That's definitely true from the upper left. You notice that they are bound. See the hands are bound. We can zero in on that. So these are definitely captives. Looks like in between are mixed some of their captors. Some of the individuals may be presented in a posture of obeisance. I see something's a bit gruesome here in the upper level. Do you notice that the incomplete figures up above are carrying the heads, the decapitated heads of their victims? So let's move a bit to the right. Here you can see part of the artillery. Notice that these, again with the conical helmets, these are the Assyrians, the attackers, and they have sling stones. You can see the archers aimed upwards. So presumably they are operating from the southwest corner of Lachish, near where the siege ramp was, and then sending their weapons, their stones and their arrows up to the Judean defenders on the wall. Quite a barrage, or quite a rank on rank of archers, aren't there? And now as we move closer to the tower, which you'll see momentarily, we have people with shorter range weapons, spears, and you can appreciate the size of the shields that they're working with. The archers, their hands are full. They can't carry shields. That makes sense. Here's another interesting one. This is a form of a shield too. This vertical looks like a wall with a curved top. And we understand from some biblical vocabulary there were small shields and large shields. The larger shields would be carried by a shield bearer. And so here from the scene you can appreciate how in the ancient world there were shields that were too big for the immediate warrior to carry. He would have needed an assistant. Now we're moving towards the fortress of the walls itself of Lachish, and notice the upward diagonal slope of this line. If we zero in on it, let's see if we can get a little closer. You can see that it's made up of components as though it were a brickwork. This is the artist's stylization of the siege ramp, and you can see that figures are climbing it. It's a bit stylized. Here you can see a siege ramp, and then a second one. Does this mean there were multiple siege ramps? That doesn't make sense, but imagine the artist trying to capture the variety of military personnel, whether it would be someone with a bow and arrow here, or spears here, or in this unit right here on wheels. Notice the wheels, they're right at the base. There, just see a little bit of the wheels showing. This is a siege engine. This is such a tragically informative picture. And thanks to this particular digitization, we're able to show you a lot of components. Here in the center then is a representation of the wall, or a tower that's associated as part of the wall. We don't see the full wall. So again, it's the schematization by the artist that we've got defenders up on top. We've got some archers. And then notice these, what look like, how should we describe them? They're just thin cylinders. Actually, we should understand these as being torches. So these are incendiaries being thrown down. And also notice these rectangles. Presumably these are projectiles being thrown down by the defenders trying to ward off the attackers. The idea of an incendiary then becomes even more realistic if we look right in this zone. So we have a torch with its flamed edge lower, and then what looks like a long spoon with spaghetti coming off of it. Well, if you are in one of these siege engines and notice that they are wrapped in hides, that's why you have this kind of seam. They didn't have a zipper back then, but kind of toggles to bind sections of hide around this, with your protected archers then hiding behind this little covering. You don't want those flames to ignite your siege engine, so you're going to be dousing your siege engine with water. So they're showing this spoon, as it were a ladle, that's keeping the front of it moist to extinguish the incendiaries. And then, as if depicting the defeat, we have some victims then who are fleeing, or perhaps they're being portrayed as being captives coming out of the fortress. You can see them with their pitiful little bags over their backs, their possessions. So these are inhabitants of Lachish that are being hauled away. Here you see some figures who are impaled. So these are victims of the war. Their bodies have been impaled on posts. More of the attacking archers. Another piece of interest here, we'll zoom in. Do you notice this? It looks like a ladder. And that indeed was part of the technique for overcoming the walls during a siege. We're aware that the archaeologists have uncovered large stones that were pierced through, far too large for sling stones, and sling stones would not have been pierced. But we understand that these large pierced stones were swung back and forth in pendulum fashion by the defenders from the top of the wall in order to dislodge the ladders, the siege attack ladders. Here we have more attackers and presentation again of a siege ramp, another siege engine. We didn't point out earlier, there's kind of a probe that was coming off of the earlier siege engine. You see it here too. So we take that to be a ram, the effect of a battering ram. Let's see what comes into view as we move further along. Now we have a wagon or a chariot, evidently with some, does not hold an individual, so perhaps some captured booty. This is interesting, isn't it? We have some parallel implements that this fellow is carrying. Not exactly sure what these are. Would they be perhaps weapons or some sort of valuable commodity that's being looted from Lachish? So these folks are moving in procession, and these with the conical helmets, and it looks like these are treasures, doesn't it? Some kind of an incense pedestal, perhaps. And they are carrying them in presentation format, and we'll want to notice where they are carrying them. Interesting, different kind of helmets here, aren't they? I'm not sure what we should understand, if those are perhaps more common warriors as opposed to high class. Incidentally, there's a decoration on this fellow's helmet. There's a crescent. It almost looks like it has some kind of a fur on it, doesn't it? Some kind of a fabric decoration. They have found a crescent in the archaeological remains. Another wagon. We have some people seated on it. It looks like there's something kind of bulbous. Maybe these are sacks of grain. Notice there are small children also. So these would be some of the refugees. Livestock being herded along. I wonder if these are musical instruments, perhaps part of a entertainment for the people in charge. That's a possibility. Definitely Assyrians now with the conical helmets. The hand position of these folks is one of obeisance, indicating servitude, and the knotted hair and beards is indicative of the Judeans. Or if we weren't sure that this was actually Israelite, then it would be more broadly, I think, a Canaanite presentation. But here we clearly know these are Judeans. Notice that in contrast to the squared-off beards with the conical helmets of the victorious warriors. We can also get a sense of what clothing was like through these presentations. Now, these people are clearly in a position of servitude, aren't they? Then more of the supportive warriors or palace attendants. And this is where they've been heading. This is the king, the emperor himself. So what we have here is Sennacherib basically in a field throne. So this is not the throne that, it's not trying to depict him back at home in Nineveh, in his capital, but rather on site at the battle scene, superintending and enjoying the privilege of being the victor. So it's in essence a field throne with various elements of war booty being presented to him. Other features that we see in this bas-relief are various trees indicating a sense of prosperity, I suppose. We have a chariot down below. We learn to notice how many spokes are in these. Is it an 8-spoke or a 6-spoke wheel? And that determines a particular era or engineering. I see there was something in a lower panel over here that indicates the cruelty. Do you notice these figures that are nude and then prone? It looks like they're being stretched out, tortured in some fashion. As we continue around this palace room for the recreation of this here in the British Museum, as I understand it, is intended to show the actual dimension of the room where these reliefs were located in the Southwest Palace in Nineveh. It becomes a little more pastoral scene, or a little more domesticated, a little happier, less of a warlike situation. The perimeter that you see here in this oval, particularly with these stones, gives me the notion that this may depict a fortress or a camp. So this may be representing the military encampment of the Assyrians there in the field. Don't quote me on that, but I have a hunch that's what's being presented. Continuing around this hall, we have other parts of the relief. Again, some archers and warriors with sling stones. Some that are working with the horses. And then these appear to be carrying stringed instruments, so musicians that are bringing a sense of auditory beauty to the setting there. More pieces of the relief. And then, appropriately, here at one end of Gallery 10, we have some actual a collection of sling stones that were retrieved from from Lachish. So this is part of the artillery that was in use in 701. And it looks like up above we have a helmet crescent. So a metal crescent, not one of fabric or feather, as was suggested earlier, but here a metal crescent that may well have come from one of the attackers' helmets.